Dave Gahan, legally speaking, is the first member of Depeche Mode to die. That is in a legal sense, but in a real sense, Martin Gore and Dave Gahan have just lost Andy Fletcher, Fletch, who was the glue that held the band together. Welcome to The Radioactive Patient, a music, art, and mental health mashup. I'm Allison Strong, your host. Today, I'm wondering, have you ever fallen in love with a scene and, drank the beer and bought the t-shirt and done all the stuff only to have it just take you down? That's what I think happened to Dave Gahan with regards to drug addiction in the 90s. And he had help. There was a negative influence in his life, and it was the British press. From George Michael to Princess Di, anybody who has ever been anybody in the world has been snarked at and stalked by the British press. And the music press, Melody Maker, which is now defunct, and New Music Express, those papers are the cattiest of all. They will rip you to pieces. So let's review. When Depeche Mode came on the scene in 1981 with their debut album Speak and Spell, the British press, and to a certain degree American music publications like Rolling Stone, dismissed the band as just another frothy boy band that will soon fade into obscurity. Little did they know that Depeche Mode would produce 15 studio albums and last as a band for 42 freaking years. But back in 1981, Depeche Mode was judged as inferior to bands like Ultravox, New Order, The Human League, OMD, Haircut 100. That stung. Dave Gahan, the lead singer of Depeche Mode, he wanted to be taken seriously as a musician. At the time, he was really enamored of grunge and heroin chic. Gosh, around that time there was this idea that you had to be tortured and strung out to produce great music, and nothing could be further from the truth. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of great talent who went down that road. Anyway, jump forward to 1989 with Depeche Mode, and that album Violator, the one that's got the little rose on the cover, is a huge success. So many radio singles, so many albums sold. The 88-date tour after that album's commercial success nearly broke them. Why? Because when you have an album that is so perfect and so well received, both commercially and critically, then the pressure is on for you to top it. And how was Depeche Mode ever going to do that? They had to take things in a different direction. Enter Dave Gahan and Heroin Chic. In the studio, when the band went to record their next album, things really started to go south. Dave Gahan would show up for work so hungover or so high they had to send him home. If you go back and listen to songs for Condemnation or Walking in My Shoes, you can tell that Dave Gahan wants you to know him and he doesn't want you to judge him. Dave Gahan's personal style had changed quite a bit. He was wearing black, he had tats, his hair was really long and greasy and stringy. He was doing goth, grunge, but he wasn't doing either one of them really well because he was playing a role, sort of. The whole thing was so dark and depressing that New Music Express put out a cover story called Dave Gahan, Dead Man Walking. And that's about when Dave Gahan started his revolving door rehab thing, which is something that a lot of us have to go through because we don't get recovery right the first time we go about it. Not that there is a right way to recover, but I'm just saying it's a lot of different things have to go smoothly for recovery to work long term. And most of us stumble and trip and fall and have to go back to the dugout. Gahan's first rehab was down in Tucson, and he did the whole 30-day thing. And then when he got out, he found out that his house had been burglarized, and he went on a spree. He started shooting dope all over again. This one night, he took a bottle of pills, drank wine, and then went to slit his wrist, which was his first suicide attempt. And he woke up in Cedars-Sinai, which is a Los Angeles hospital, in a psych ward. He'd been put on a 72-hour hold because he was judged as dangerous to himself or others. After the 72 hours were up, he went and OD'd again and woke up back in the psych ward. And he had some trouble with the law, too. He had possession of a controlled substance. But in a way, that was kind of a good thing because the judge sentenced him to rehab. Anyway, if Dave Gahan completed treatment and the sober living thing for the next couple of months, both his felony charges would be dropped. And so he did that. In later years, Gahan would reflect and say that he had become a parody of himself. But that was on down the road when he had some recovery time behind him. He made some interesting statements that I want to read to you. He said, I didn't get sober just not to pick up drugs. I got sober and go to NA meetings because I want to learn more about myself and how I can deal with the things in my life that I don't really have the tools to deal with. I denied myself that by medicating every single feeling I've had for years. Sound familiar? In the short term, getting off drugs can run your mental health through the ringer, as if early sobriety isn't hard enough on its own. But it can be done. One just has to find something that they love more than getting high. And it can take a while. I would know. I've been to rehab quite a few times, and I used to have an opiate habit. It's been, let's knock on this table, it's been 3.5 years since I felt the need to take anything like that. Well, that's a great place for us to end this edition of The Radioactive Patient. I would love it if you liked and subscribed if you wanted to. When you do stuff like that, like taking the time to write a comment, let me know if I missed anything or got anything terribly wrong. The algorithm, YouTube's algorithm, thinks that comments are catnip, and then they show the video to more people, and then we get more views and more people come aboard the community, and that's really what I'm after. Coming up next week, I've got a profile on Tori Amos. I've got one on John Lydon, also known as Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, and another one on Morrissey's most hopeful song. I hope we can share that together. If you stay close, you won't miss it, and I'll be here, okay? Deal? Deal.